Money Roots is made possible by the support of our sponsor, Rooted Planning Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Rooted Planning Group, your trusted partner in financial well-being. At www.rootedpg.com, you'll discover a wealth of resources and expertise to help you thrive financially. Rooted Planning Group specializes in personalized financial planning, investment management, and retirement strategies. They understand that every financial journey is unique, and they're here to guide you every step of the way. With a team of experienced advisors, Rooted Planning Group is committed to helping you cultivate a secure and prosperous future. Visit www.rootedpg.com today to learn more about how Rooted Planning Group can help you grow your money roots. Welcome to Money Roots, the podcast where personal finance gets personal. Each week, Amy and her guests dig deep into the world of finance, making it more approachable and understandable for everyone, no matter where you are on your financial journey. From savings and investments to budgeting and planning, we'll bring you practical advice, inspiring stories, and expert insights. We believe that everyone has the potential to grow a healthy financial future, and we're here to help you nurture it. So whether you're a financial guru or just starting to plant the seeds of your financial knowledge, this is the place for you. Get ready to uncover the tools and strategies that can help you thrive financially. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode of Money Roots.
Hello, Money Root listeners. Amy Irvine, CEO and founder of Rooted Planning Group here. And since it is March, it is Women's History Month, I wanted to share with you some information that I thought you might find very interesting. Before we get started about women and history around money, I wanted to first kind of give you some idea of what money actually is. A lot of people don't know this unless they studied some form of economics, but money supply actually is broken down into three categories, what they call M1, M2, and M3. M1 money supply is currency in circulation, it's your checking account, and it's your money market funds. Money market account, not money market funds. It's what is available to spend right now. M2 money supply is M1 money supply, so currency in circulation, checking, money market accounts, plus savings accounts, investor money market accounts. So now that's where our money market funds, that's where the money market mutual funds come into play. And then CDs less than 100K. So that's the overall amount of money available in the economy, which can influence inflation and economic growth. And then there's M3 money supply, which is M1 plus M2. So just to recap, it's currency in circulation, checking, money market accounts, savings accounts, investor money market funds, so under 100K, and money market funds, so your money market mutual funds under 100K that are investor class, and then CDs that are 100K or less, plus CDs that are over 100K and institutional money market funds. Usually within the US, this isn't published anymore. M1 and M2 information is published. So that's just a very basic understanding of what money supply actually is. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because we've been having a lot of conversations with people about money supply in general and what are the next courses of where do I think the economy is going to be, going down the next few months. So now let me shift gears. Now that I've given you what money supply is, let me shift gears just a little bit and share with you some history of women in money. So I did a bunch of research and I pulled from a couple different blogs, but one of the best blogs I found was written by Maggie Germano on Smart Money Mamas. So here's some details that come from there. And there are some other dates that come from other different places that I did some additional research on, but that's where a lot of this information came from. So starting in 1769, women became one of their husbands' ownership, right? So women they became one with their husband. Only the husband was considered a citizen with legal rights, and women became his property. This also meant that any property or inheritance that a woman had automatically became her husband's. So this is 1769, prior to the actual formation of our country, really. So just sit on that for a minute, right? And then in 1777, women's voting rights were abolished. 1777, women's voting rights were abolished. So if you can't vote, you have no say over what does and doesn't happen to you. If you're not considered enough of a citizen to at least be able to vote, you are less likely to receive any other rights, like ownership over your own property, the ability to work, protection against discrimination, and more. And that was back in 1777. Fast forward to 1839. So from 1777 to 1839, Married Women's Property Act was passed. The laws helped fix some of the problems women were facing due to the law enacted in 1769 that made them their husband's property, and therefore all their property became their husband's property. Specifically, the law allowed married women to own property, keep their own income, and engage in business. So that was 1839. In 1862, there was a California law that was passed that established a state savings and loan industry that guaranteed that a woman was entitled to maintain control of any money she deposited in her own name. The state recognized the financial independence of women and approved a loan to a woman in the same year. Now, this was only in the state of California at that point in time, but the U.S. Homestead Act was also passed in 1862, which made it easier for single, widowed, or divorced women to own their own land. So that was in their own names. That was in 1862. Not a lot happened until 1769. Women became one with their husband. I'm sorry, let me go forward. Not a lot happened until 1870. There was a woman by the name of Victoria Woodhull, and her sister Tennessee became the first female stockbrokers. So this was in 1870, and it was 1862 that the California law was passed, and then in 1870, Victoria Woodhull and her sister Tennessee became the first female stockbrokers, opened their own brokerage on Wall Street, and they made millions of dollars, by the way. If you ever want to read their story, it's quite amazing. However, 3 years later, in 1873, women were banned from practicing law, which I found really interesting in the history of money, because that's why I'm bringing that in, is because that is something that as a profession, they were actually barred from participating in, which meant that they couldn't actually get into law. They couldn't practice law at that point in time. And that could be used against other professional characteristics or other professional jobs that were out there, and viewed as though women weren't intelligent enough to actually practice in that kind of professional capacity. In 1875, now remember I said to you that it was 1777 that women's rights were abolished. Well, in 1875, the Supreme Court upheld the ban on women's voting. So almost 100 years, and the ban was upheld in the Supreme Court. So in 1908, when you're looking at it about 28 years later, women's work hours were reduced. And this was another Supreme Court case. Women were found to be lesser than their male counterparts. Limiting the hours that they could work made it so that they were unable to earn more money to support themselves and their families. Plus, the court explicitly called a woman's physical structure and performance of maternal functions. Like that's what they said that's what they're supposed to do when making decisions. So they just weren't physically capable. Their structure and performance of maternal functions weren't capable of making them have that many hours or work that many hours, which is a problem when you think about trying to support their family if they needed to. If they were a widow or if they were a single mom or something like that, then that made it very challenging. So that was in 1908. About 12 years later, most women are granted the right to vote finally. So in 1920, most women are granted the right to vote. Of course, there were still many limitations and restrictions in place for women of color. So in actuality, the 19th Amendment only really granted white women the right to vote. And I can share a little bit more on that later. But that's when it became official in 1920. In 1924, so 4 years later, Native Americans are granted the right to citizenship. This legislation technically gave Native Americans the right to vote. And I say technically, but they weren't considered citizens before that. And they had no rights to financial growth or development. In 1938, so 14 years later, the Fair Standards of Labor Act is passed. This is where American employers adopt an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week. It set a national minimum wage for all labor. It also allowed workers to earn wages for extra hours of overtime, which would be paid at 1.5 times the normal hourly wage. And children were also protected by these laws. So this was in 1938. Wasn't until 1964 that a major change happened around the Civil Rights Act, which was passed. It outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. So that helped theoretically say that, if I have the same skill set as a white male, then I should be hired just as much as they should be hired. So technically, that law that was passed was meant to do that. About 12 years later, Title IX is passed, which outlawed education discrimination on the basis of gender, opening up more education to women. This also applied to any activities or programs that received federal financial assistance. 2 years later, so this is 1974, and to put in context, I was born in 1972, so Title IX was passed. 1974, I was 2 years old. So all of this that I've shared with you is in the history. When we think about this law, and this is a big one to me, this law is only 51 years old, but the Equal Credit Opportunity Act is passed. This legislation made it illegal to deny credit on the basis of sex or marital status. So prior to that, it wasn't an issue. It also was based on race, color, national origin, religion. But up until that point, an organization could technically discriminate based on your gender. The law applies to banks, retailers, bank cards, finance companies, and credit unions. It also prohibits asking about marital status and whether or not the borrower has or plans to have children. Now, I will tell you that this continued well beyond this. Although it was not supposed to, it did. 4 years later, in 1978, it became illegal to discriminate based on pregnancy. So 1978, this is passed. The Civil Rights Act was amended to include the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. And this statute explicitly prohibits discrimination on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, and related conditions. So technically, women at that point in time, if they got pregnant prior to that, you could lose your job. You could lose your way of supporting yourself. 1978, it became illegal to discriminate. In 2009, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act is passed. 2009. This amended the Civil Rights Act and stated that a 180-day statute of limitations for filing an equal pay lawsuit regarding pay discrimination resets with each new paycheck affected by the Discriminatory Act. This gives people more time to file their complaints so they don't miss the opportunity just because they waited too long. Now, based on an article published in Forbes on March 5th of 2025, women still to this day earn 85% on average of what men earn. This has only increased from 81% to 85% since 2003. Now, there is some good information out there, and hopefully this trend continues, but based on the age, the number looks to be a little different. So when we're looking at the age of a 25 to a 34-year-old, it's only, and be sure if you're just listening to this, you understand, I say that with great sarcasm, a 5% gap. There shouldn't be any gap, but there still is a 5% gap. So, but age 25 to 34, the gap is 5% versus 15% on average. The studies have shown that they believe that the gap increases above that age group because of a motherhood penalty, and that there is statistic information that shows there is a 15% reduction in pay for women having children. They call that the motherhood penalty, 15% reduction. There's still a lot that we need to do to continue to bring parity to the way that women earn money, get paid, our relationship with money, all of that. But it all starts with education and being aware of what the differences are in the history that we've experienced and standing on the shoulders of the women that have walked before us. We've had great allies along the way, and we need to continue to lean on those allies. And by allies, I mean those wonderful men that do support women having great financial knowledge and earning equal parity to what they're earning. But we need to work together to improve this. And for Women's History Month, if you have a daughter, if you have a niece, if you have a wife, support her in the way that, promotes this continued direction towards parity of pay and therefore equal retirement savings, equal opportunity to increase their own knowledge around finance, and to be able to protect and take care of themselves if, God forbid, something should happen to a partner. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this particular session. And by the way, not all women have partners. So that's an important reason to be an ally to support your friends and your family members that have it. And again, thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed this walk down memory lane in this history behind women and money and what money actually is, money supply. Thank you, everyone.
You've been listening to Money Roots, your go-to podcast for making personal finance accessible and approachable. Thanks for joining us today. Amy and her guests have enjoyed guiding you through the roots of your financial journey. Remember, whether you're planting new seeds of financial knowledge or nurturing the growth of your existing financial plans, Money Roots is here to support you every step of the way. Be sure to follow them on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and Instagram for more resources. And, of course, subscribe to Money Roots wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. A big thank you to the sponsor, Rooted Planning Group, for making this show possible. At Rooted Planning Group, they're committed to helping you cultivate a thriving financial future. Until next time, keep growing your money roots.